Hello, Steeler Nation, and welcome to your SteelerNation.com podcast. I'm your host, G.Stryker, and with me today, you've heard him on the Locked On Steelers podcast, NFL and NCAA analyst, Chris Carter. Chris, welcome to the show. I'm glad to have you aboard. Oh, got you muted still.
There we go.
There we go.
Thanks for having me, Stryker. It's great to be here, man. Here on the SteelerNation.com podcast. This is really cool, man. I've been seeing y'all shows. Y'all been doing some good stuff. So happy to join you guys.
Oh, very happy to have you. And I'm happy to have another fellow podcaster, and sounds like Steeler fanatic as well. Have you always been has the Steelers been your favorite team growing up?
I mean, as a kid, I grew up in Pittsburgh. So I mean, what choice did you have?
Right.
But in all seriousness, my father was a football coach, nice. So I always loved watching the game and I'm trying to understand the game. And like everyone in my family was Steelers fans. So, when you grew up in the family and that was it, that's what it was. And every Sunday, my grandpa would come over and, nice. It was about watching the game together. And so, that's how it built. And then, it's been a good way to kind of get my, when I got into it originally, it was just blogging when I was in school. And then eventually I was like, people say I'm good at this thing. So let me try to do this from a more, professional standpoint. And that's where it's been fun doing that over the past few years.
That's fantastic. I mean, you've done it all. I mean, you're doing the podcasting, you're doing radio, reporting, writing articles, analysis. So how long have you been covering the Steelers?
So I started blogging, I wanted to say back in 2013, and then I got picked up by DK Pittsburgh Sports in 2016.
Nice.
And then since then, I've done stuff for Channel 11. I've done WPXI here in Pittsburgh. I've done work for Steeler Nation Radio, where I'm actually still doing work for them. Nice. Been at training camp for them all through the summer, so that's been a lot of fun. And doing the Locked On Steelers podcast that started up, I want to say 2 years ago. So, it was a part-time thing for a while, but lately it's been a full-time thing. So
that's
not
awesome.
mad at that at all.
Not at all. And for training camp, are you there for every training camp, or are you only there for the training camps that are open to the public?
So I'm there for the ones at Heinz Field. Like there was one day where I was public. We've been doing a show for Steeler Nation Radio, 1 to 4 at Heinz Field since they opened the stadium up. Even when the fans couldn't go there, I was going there.
Nice.
Now I wasn't able to. We didn't do that from the South Side facility, the UPMC Sports Complex. But once they moved to Heinz Field, I've been there every day, and then I skedaddle over to the West End Bridge to the station in Green Tree to record with Adam Crowley for 4 to 6. So
awesome.
Keep him busy, man.
That's a quick commute, 1 to 4 and then 4 to 6. That's the fastest commute coming out. I'm a timing guy. You know how that stuff works, but that's great. That's awesome. So are you able to watch a lot of practice?
Oh yeah.
Is there anybody specifically that you're really excited about this year in training camp?
I mean, I've been beating the Alex Highsmith drum for months.
You and Louis Riddick, man. I just had him on the show. He couldn't say enough about Alex Highsmith.
Great show, by the way. Louis Riddick is one of the guys that I looked up to. I still look up to as far as his analysis, the way he breaks down the game,
right?
And trying to learn. I learn more from people like him. So that was fascinating when you had him on the show. But Alex Highsmith, I mean, the things that he showed last year was like really good. Mm-hmm. And then I got to hang out with him at the there was the Hayward House Celebrity softball event about a month ago. Yeah. And first of all, the guy can hit home runs like it's nobody's business. He did. I was like, Alex, you played baseball too? He's like, yeah, I was like, dang, okay. He's gotten. I think he got his feet under him last year, and now he knows he got stronger. He's a little quicker, and I'll tell you, every day in training camp, man, he's beating somebody to the punch. And at first it was Dan Moore Jr. and everyone's like, oh, okay, but now he's doing that consistently to Chukuma Okorafor. Wow. Now you're asking the question, it's like, okay, is this going to be a thing all season long? Right. I think Steelers fans are going to be in for a nice surprise, for those who were like, oh man, Bud Dupree's gone. There's going to be no pressure off that edge. I'm like, I'm not, I wouldn't say just that just yet.
And that's, to me, it seemed like when Bud Dupree entered the league, limitless potential, super high ceiling, just a lower floor, took him longer to come on. And it's amazing to me that Alex Highsmith, coming from that smaller school in Charlotte, seems to have that elevated floor. Might not have the high-end athletic talent that a Bud Dupree has, but man, he's like a TJ Watt Jr. and his floor is high, big work ethic, trying to work harder every day. And I love hearing about him right now. Loved him too when I got to the pleasure to talk with him. Seems like a great man, great morals, loves very religious, very centered in his religion, and just a really neat guy to talk to. And I can't help but root for the guy. I'm just excited to see how he does.
No, yeah, he's a very nice guy. I mean, you meet him and he makes you feel like you're a normal person. You don't feel like I'm talking to a superstar athlete here. That's anything like that. But he makes you feel at home. I gotta say, one of the coolest things is watching him and his father Sam Highsmith. I mean, the two of them together, just seeing how supportive his father is and how close they are. It's just it touches you, man, because you're like, man, that's like everybody wants that kind of relationship with their dad. I'm lucky to have a father like that who's always supported me. So when I see it, I'm just like, go ahead, Highsmith. That's pretty cool. But I will say this too about Alex when it comes to the style of play. You were talking about Bud Dupree. Bud Dupree had to kind of figure out where he fit in the NFL when he got here, because when he got to the NFL, he was super explosive, really fast off the ball. But the Steelers had been used to kind of using converted defensive ends into outside linebackers that would be their edge rushers. That's what Joey Porter was, and he was the edge rusher coach when he was in Pittsburgh. Yep. But Bud kind of had to figure out, like, hey, man, I'm not a power anchor kind of guy. I'm not here to be, he had power, but he had to figure out how to use it. And I'd say like 2017 was when it clicked for Bud. And then after that, from 2018 to 2020, he figured it out.
Now, is there anybody on the offensive side that you're excited about? Obviously, we're hearing Najee Harris seems to be as advertised, right? Right. But is there anybody else that you're seeing on offense? And you can even describe what you're seeing out of Najee and what makes him different than a lot of the running backs we've had here in the past.
I mean, the thing is with Najee is that he's already in supreme shape. Like, not that other guys haven't been in great shape, but like Le'Veon Bell, when he got to the NFL, he needed to figure out what he was going to be like. And then he got good. He made sure he came in 2014 with chiseled abs and, being extreme, having the amazing footwork. But man, Najee got that already. And like, if you listen to the Adam Schefter podcast during the offseason, before the draft even happened, and Adam Schefter was talking to him about his routine, like Najee Harris, all throughout the pre-draft season, he would get to a place and he had to work out. I think it was by like either 5 or 7 a.m. every morning. And that was his routine. And he would not break that for anything. And for his fellow Crimson Tide, when they had their pro day, when all his teammates were getting ready to show off their stuff so the NFL scouts could come and look at them, he wasn't even performing.
But he drove. Yeah. Right. So driving back to be part of it. That's awesome.
But not just to be part of it. He drove so he could get to Tuscaloosa early enough so he could do his 5 a.m. workout before he did that. Like that's how locked in this dude has been about being in shape. So it's like now not is he in shape, but he has the he has the catching ability. He has the ability to run routes, because Le'Veon Bell had to develop that as a Steeler. This guy's coming into camp knowing how to line up out wide and make people miss and get out and create separation, on top of being a power runner who can charge in, get the tough yards that you need. The other day he had a rep where they were doing 7 shots and Melvin Ingram had a clean shot on him, got a hold of him at the 2-yard line. He dragged Melvin Ingram into the end zone. So like this guy, he's been truly special. But again, Najee Harris, the cheat code, if you're going to ask like, oh, who's impressing you on offense? Right. Everybody can say that every week. I will say I have been impressed with the way that Dan Moore Jr., the rookie tackle out of Texas A&M, I have been impressed with how he's bounced back, because his first week when they put on the pads, he was going up against Alex Highsmith, and Highsmith was just beating him almost every single rep. And it was just like, man, like he's getting manhandled. And people were asking, is this guy ready? Can he do this? But he's rebounded very strongly. He's even had some reps where he's kind of held his own with Alex. No, Alex still has been winning the majority of them, but he's doing better in that regard. And I thought he had a really good showing against the Cowboys in the Hall of Fame game, granted against backups, but for a 4th round draft pick rookie, he's been pretty solid. I think you could say a lot about the guys on the offense. Kendrick Green has fit in really well. Pat Freiermuth has been as advertised as a receiving threat. And then there's just the entire receiving core. They're just so deep in talent. All those guys. So there's a lot of things standing out about the Pittsburgh Steelers at training camp right now.
And we talked about this. I had a podcast last night with my co-host, Colton Gesser, and it seems like the Steelers are really deep now at outside linebacker with, like, we talked about Highsmith. we talked about Watt. We talked about, we brought in Ingram as well, but now, you've got Marsh, who's really seems to be stepping up this year, because I felt like he might have had a trouble to make this roster with them drafting Roche, but Roche is jumping out and making plays in preseason. Jones made a sack in the preseason game. So, I mean, you've got players in the first preseason game 6 deep out there making plays in the backfield. I mean, what do you do, and who do you end up having to sit in this situation? I mean, do you make a vet cut to cut salary, or do you try to stash one of these guys on the practice squad, one of the younger kids?
Well, I'll say this. It is crazy to say this now. I also think some people should kind of just hang in there. Let's not jump the gun and say, oh man, they're super deep at edge rusher right now, because just a couple of weeks ago, we were like, oh no, they don't have any depth at edge rusher. Right. And they signed Melvin Ingram. Their situation right now, they could just keep going through. They have 3 more preseason games to evaluate these guys. I would say, of course you keep your top 3 guys, Watt, Highsmith, and Ingram. Cassius Marsh really came on strong. He's showing that, hey, the reason I've hung around the NFL so long is because I can adapt. Yes, he didn't play well against the Browns in that playoff game, but he also had just gotten to the team. He still needed to adjust to what he was being asked to do. And now you're seeing a full year with training camp and off-season preparation, and he's looking more like a solid backup back there. But you're also seeing Quincy Roche make his plays. I think it's Jamar Jones. I mean, number 44. He is explosive off the ball. That's where the question is going to be, because they're really excited about Roche with his hand technique. He is, when I was watching his tape from college in Miami, and Temple, this guy would set you up with 2 different moves, and he had counters to what offensive tackles are doing. And it's rare to find guys in college that are that refined. Oftentimes they'll lean on being just a lot more athletic than the other guy in front of them. But he has that sense down, and he has other things he needs to work on. I'm not saying he's ready to start right now, but they have good questions to be answered about their depth on the edge. And who knows? Maybe they come in and they're like, you know what? We'll keep 5 guys this year on the edge because we want that rotation. But there's always that tough question when you're shortening it down to 53. What positions do you want, to have an abundance, and what positions do you want to do you want to just say, hey, we'll trust these few guys to hold it down? Keith Butler during minicamp made a very pointed response to say, we want to make sure that our top guys that get after the quarterback are fresh in the early to mid 4th quarter, because that's the crunch time. Yep. So maybe the Steelers, they want to keep a stronger rotation of guys in there, because they want to say, hey, we want to bring off Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt so that we can, but still be able to apply pressure throughout the game. So I would not be shocked if they kept 5. I doubt they keep 6. But it's going to be a big question over the next few weeks. Who wins out those 4th and 5th spots? I'd say Marsh and Roche have the inside track, but man, Jones is making it really tough.
Can't sleep on him. That's great. And there's one player that I am excited about, because usually I used to say, yeah, I could make it in the NFL. I'm 6 feet, 175 pounds, soaking wet with a pocket full of nickels, because of a certain position that is usually played, being punter. Yes. I am so excited. Our new nickname, punter, we're calling him Biggest Kickus. And
Biggest Kickus. Okay.
Yep. That it's an old Monty Python Life of Brian reference. And but obviously Presley Harvin III is killing it. I mean, he put together probably the most impressive 4 punts I've ever seen a Steeler make in any game. And it was in a preseason. I know, right? And this is a preseason game that we're talking about, obviously. But I've never seen a punter put together 4 different kicks and have them executed, all 4 of them executed perfectly. It was just he's fun to watch to me, and also being a huge bodied guy maybe gives you some different options as being able to go for it, maybe on short runs for a 4th and short, or with that arm, we already know he can throw it for a first down as well.
I mean, if I'm a Steelers fan, I'm sitting here saying don't even think about that kind of stuff. There's no need to even need to contemplate. Oh yeah, maybe he could. Listen, this guy has the potential to be one of the best punters in the NFL, maybe even the best punter in the NFL with the potential that he's shown. And I tell everyone this when I talk about Presley Harvin, I almost call him Purse. Everybody
does, yeah.
Everyone does that. But when I covered Pitt last year, and when they played Georgia Tech, each time Pitt's defense, they got after the quarterback, much like the Steelers did last year, and they would just sack the quarterback, stuff the run. And when they played Georgia Tech, they kept pinning them inside the 10 or inside the 5, and it was getting really rough for Georgia Tech's offense. But every time their special teams came out there, this guy Presley Harvin would just boom it and put it and Pitt would be back on their own 30. And it was like, who is this guy? Like, what is this? Wow. What does this dude do? Like, what does he take? Like, this is ridiculous. And then it turned out it was Presley Harvin III, the first ever black punter to win the Ray Guy Award. So
awesome.
So I mean, there was a sense of excitement there for a lot of reasons. But Danny Smith, when he talked about his pro day experience with Presley Harvin, he said, when I went to see him, it was his turn to punt at the pro day. It started pouring down rain, and then they were like, "Oh, we'll move inside to the gym so you can see what he can do." And Presley Harvin said, "No, I'm going to show you what I can do in the pouring down rain." And he was booming punts through like a thunderstorm, or not a thunderstorm, because that would be then they would get you out of there, but through a storm. And Danny Smith was like, "That's my guy. I'm getting him. That's what I want." And that's why they spent a draft pick on a punter. And at least early on, it looks like it was a well investment.
And at least it wasn't a 4th round draft pick on a punter. I mean, that's a Sepulveda pick back then, was a while ago. Ooh. But last time I was excited over a punter, but I'm not going to lie. I'm really excited over what this kid's going to do. And just seeing him move forward. And I was a big Barry fan as well. I love the Aussie punt kickers. I love the Aussie style. I love the Aussie roll, pinning people. But I mean, this guy looks like he's got a stronger leg, younger kid, more future. So I'm hoping that
if you like Aussie kickers, check out Pitt football. They still got Kirk Christodoulou. So
nice.
He does a pretty good job for them as well. In fact, he's on a bunch of award lists this year. So really, really cool stuff there as well.
So I was listening to your podcast this morning while I was prepping for this one, the one that you did today. And big news for the day, Steeler Nation. Joe Hayden wants to retire as a Pittsburgh Steeler. Drew Rosenhaus has already approached the Steelers for a contract extension. Now, my question to you, Chris, would you extend Hayden? And if you would, what would it look like? How many years, numbers? If you were the GM, what would a contract extension, if you chose to give him a contract extension, which I think you would, but what would it look like for you?
It's a tricky situation because we're still in salary cap, wild west right now, because this year the salary cap, of course, dipped down to a historical low, but next year it's booming to a historical high. So the traditional ideas that we have in our heads of, oh, you'd pay a cornerback this or a safety that or a quarterback this, that's not, I wouldn't say it goes out the window, but it's going to change because you're going to have different, amounts of money that you want to spend. I am in favor of the Steelers signing Joe Hayden to an extension. I know some people out there, but he's 30, he'll be 33 next year. And you can't do that. I don't think Joe Hayden's going to be costing them like $15 million to keep. Mm-hmm. I think it would be closer to the $5 to $8 million range. And probably on the higher side there, of course. But Joe Hayden's a guy, and I've said this about him for as long as I've covered him. He's a guy, he doesn't rely on speed. Like, people talk about, there's the drop off at cornerback, but Joe Hayden's never been a fast guy. Like he didn't run a 4.4 flat when he came out of Florida. But he's been about technique. He's been about positioning. He's been about outsmarting. He's been about being, making sure I have the right hand technique to make sure that I'm and trail technique, being behind the back shoulder and being able to play over the front shoulder and knock the ball away, or reading, understanding what the offense is trying to do and getting to the receiver spot so I can intercept the pass. Those are the things that he's done throughout his whole career. That doesn't go away. The smarts don't go away. What does go away is, well, eventually there will be a little bit of quickness that you lose, that you won't be as good lining up on the outside. Now, here's my thought on Joe Hayden. If at any point he starts to feel, hey man, I'm not having it as much on the outside at cornerback, that's where you look, okay, moving to safety. The guy's smart enough. He understands the game enough. And I'm not saying like, replace Minka Fitzpatrick, but maybe make him some guy that you'd be willing to move around the field a little bit. Charles Woodson did that. I'm not saying he's Charles Woodson, the guy that just went into the Hall of Fame, but I am saying that, we've seen other cornerbacks do this throughout their careers, where they bumped back to safety when they just didn't have the speed to make them as comfortable on the outside as they were. Joe Hayden's the smart enough kind of player that he could, study, make that adjustment, and be effective for the Steelers. They haven't signed Terrell Edmunds to a future contract. They didn't take up his 5th-year option. I'm not saying that that's their plan, but the Steelers absolutely should pursue this, because also beyond being a player, whether he's a cornerback or a safety, Joe Hayden is a leader. He is a guy that you want in the locker room. Ever since he got to training camp, he was the guy that, when even back in the Latrobe days, you'd go down to the field, and when everyone's stretching, the cornerbacks are around each other, he's leading the conversation. He's making the jokes. Everyone's circled around him. That's the kind of guy that he is. And, Minka Fitzpatrick is taking over the secondary leadership. There's no doubt about that. But having a guy like Joe help set the tone, and having another veteran around, that's always helpful. So I think the Steelers would be well within reason to make sure that he remains a Pittsburgh Steeler for at least another year or two.
And you hit the nail on the head. And I love that idea too, of moving him to safety possibly. And it would be an interesting safety tandem to see Hayden and Fitzpatrick working in the backfield with different edge corners. That I like that a lot. One thing I want to also bring up about Joe Hayden is his durability.
Yes.
Over his entire career. I mean, one of his worst injuries, he had with his first year with us when he had the fibula fracture. He broke his leg. He missed 5 games with a broken leg. 5 games. And we didn't have a bye during those 5 games. Like I'm a geek here. I track injuries. I do all this weird stuff.
Hey, yeah.
So, but in the next 3 years, missed 1 game with a hamstring injury in 2018, 0 games missed in 19, missed 2 games last year. 1 was with a concussion in week 14. And then he got COVID week 17. Unfortunately, he missed that game and the wild card game, which I think were huge factors.
Yeah, they absolutely were
for the Steelers being able to advance in the playoffs. But, at least we got a better draft pick ahead of both the Cleveland Browns and the Baltimore Ravens. That's my only bright spot from that. But I'm with you. Like, I really didn't think of the argument that Joe Hayden doesn't rely on his speed as much as other corners, in which you're dead right. And Charles Woodson and even Rod Woodson were faster cornerbacks.
Yes, they were.
And when they lost their speed, they had an easy transition. It seemed like both of them still ended up being Pro Bowl safeties in their career after they transitioned. And I think this could also happen to a player like Hayden. So great takes on that aspect. And for me though, I think Drew Rosenhaus is not going to the Steelers to ask for a payment discount.
No. He's Drew knows what he's doing. He's going to get the best contract for his team. But it's also about what Joe's not coming back just to come back. He's not coming back thinking like, oh yeah, they may stink next year. Who knows? He thinks the reason Joe Hayden's talking about this right now is that he appreciates what the Steelers organization has been to him. And think about this. This guy was drafted by the Browns. Yeah. He was there for most of his career. That's where he made his money. That's where he became a Pro Bowler. And since coming to the Steelers now, he's like, I want to retire a Pittsburgh Steeler. The Browns are hot right now. He could be like, hey, bring me back over there and I'll be with you. No, he's saying he wants to stick with the Pittsburgh Steelers. That speaks to his confidence. That's in his teammates. That speaks to his comfort level with the team. Also, I think that speaks to how he feels about the organization led by Kevin Colbert, Mike Tomlin, Mr. Rooney, all those guys. I think it speaks volumes for a guy like Joe Hayden to say, you know what, I think I still got 2 more years in the NFL. I'd be cool spending it right here, however you guys want to use me. So Yeah, man, I think that does say a lot about what it means to him, what to stick with the Steelers, and it should say to the Steelers fans who are like, man, like the national media isn't giving us much hope. Everyone's saying that the Steelers are going to be like 5-11 or 5-12 this year because there's 17 games. I'll never get used to that. But
right.
Everyone's saying they're going to stink this year, but the players seem confident. Melvin Ingram wouldn't sign with a team he thought would stink, and Joe Hayden wants to stick around. There's something going on with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I thought there was a great clip, last week when Mike Tannenbaum took one of his 1,000 shots at Ben Roethlisberger that he always takes on ESPN, and he starts going at it with swagoo. But then Mike Greenberg on Get Up is like, says like, it's crazy, but there's a lot of national people who seem to be down about the Steelers. But whenever I talk to someone that's in the NFL, that works in the NFL, they take this team seriously and they think they're a serious threat. So I really think that there's something there. I tell people all the time for our betonline.ag ad reads for Locked On Steelers, the over under that people have for the Steelers is 8.5 wins this year. I'm saying, man, mash the over. Get that. They're getting at least 9 wins this season.
Yeah. And I agree. And with the extra playoff spot being in there, even though we're in a tougher division, Cleveland made the playoffs last year. They're improving. Their defense is really improving, and they're a real threat on defense now. Same thing. Baltimore's always a threat on defense. I think their offense is a little bit easier for us to manage, and it seems like we've kind of figured it out. Lamar Jackson, but Cincinnati's on the rise too. Great young talent. So the amazing thing I was looking up as we were talking, Hayden was in Cleveland for 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
He had 5. Thank you, Kat. He had 5 different head coaches in 7 years. Coming to the Pittsburgh Steelers, where you got the same head coach the entire time. You have the same defensive coordinator the entire time. I think Butler's still been there the entire time he's been.
Yep.
Some minor position switches and things like that, and differences in some philosophy and strategies, but consistency. I mean, this is something that he never had, and a lot of players state that about the Pittsburgh Steelers is the reason why you want to come here. The reason why it's the best place in football is the consistency and the family atmosphere, being felt like you're treated more like family. People care about what you have to say and who you are as a human being, not just who you are as a football player. So that's really awesome to see. And for him to have all that, those accolades and all that success in Cleveland, move the next town over and just be like, I'm home. That is awesome. But I mean, you said it right there. 5 coaches in 7 years. The Steelers have had 3 coaches since 1969. Like, that's stability right there. And this is what I also say, because I have friends who are Browns fans and they're really excited, and I'm like, man, this Browns team reminds me a lot of that Jaguars team, man. In 2017, they were red hot. Everyone was really excited about them. They acquired a lot of free agents. They acquired a lot of high draft picks. Mm-hmm. But as soon as like people started putting a target on their back, you saw things start to fall apart, and then guys were leaving, and then all of a sudden they're the first overall pick again, and now they're rebuilding with Trevor Lawrence. I don't see the continuity with the Browns there yet. You got to do it multiple years before I start to say, okay, now you have rebounded. You are a serious threat in the NFL. I wonder how serious they're going to take it. I mean, you see them that their merchandise is still very Steelers centric. They have nameless great faces shirts for a quote that wasn't even like a diss to them. It was just, that's what Mike Tomlin calls every opponent to his so right. I'm not so sure that they're going to be. I want to see if they're for real. They'll come out this year and they'll improve on their record. But I'm a little wary because I've seen this happen time and time again, where a young upstart team with a less than, I'd say average to below average quarterback in Baker Mayfield, a good ground game and with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. But again, just like the Jaguars, but I would say even the Jaguars defense back then was better than this Browns defense. Yeah, that was an insane defense.
Yeah. So I'm very intrigued to see how that goes. But if you're Joe Hayden again, if the Browns were that hot, why wouldn't he be like, I'll hop on your train. Because if you guys are the train ride, why not go to this thing that looks stable? I'd go back to Cleveland where fans would love me, and because it'd be a homecoming. No, he wants to finish with the Steelers. Again, I think that speaks volumes to how people on the inside feel about this team.
Nice. And Chow Chow Dad over at Twitter has a question for us.
Sure. Asking,
after scraping to make the salary cap, won't these contracts spend money we don't have yet? And we've already alluded to that. We have a ton of money, 77 mil, I think, next year already projected to be in the cap. And I think that's before the final cap rise has even been figured out. So it might be in the 80s. So the Steelers have a ton of money next year. Also, they haven't made their last cuts. They might free up a couple more million to carry over into the next season. We could approach 90 million. And that is odd how it started off this season where we were upside down 25 million. And now we have a ton of money left over just because like Pouncey decided to retire. David DeCastro decided to retire. And like a lot of these moves that we weren't expecting have opened up a lot of cap. You know, Ben was taking the pay cut early on just to make sure we could get under and sign a couple guys. And now it seems like we've got extra money to even sign more people. Would you see the Steelers signing somebody else now? Do you think that there's a position of need now or a position of depth now that would help out the Steelers?
I mean, the Steelers aren't going to not keep their eyes open, because one thing to remember is that injuries happen, cuts happen, and you never know what opportunity may be out there. Like, you know, CJ Henderson, the former top 10 pick by the Jaguars is now being rumored to be in the trade mill to be sent somewhere else. So, you know, if you can get another top 10 defensive back, you know, like you got Minkah Fitzpatrick, and if you can get him for less than a first, you know, and you feel good about the guy, why not take a shot at that? But again, you know, it's all about keeping within their plans and what they want to do. There's also other teams, they're going to have, you know, there are other teams that still need to meet their salary cap needs, and they may let a guy go. Heck, Joe Hayden, the reason he became Pittsburgh Steelers because the Browns cut him, right at the start of training camp, and they were like, okay, we'll take that guy.
The best part was that day, right when he was cut. It's like that day. It's like, hey, Steelers are like already reaching out to me. Like, hey, Joe, what's going on?
And they were quick to do that. So the Steelers are lying in wait to make their best, to make the moves they really want to make, because you don't know what opportunities do exist out there, and that's why they got that. But, you know, for the question as far as are they spending money they don't have yet, they've got the money. I mean, you talked about this stuff that right now, as it stands, before any TJ Watt money is signed, they have the most salary cap space for next season. And that's with whatever bump it goes, or if it sticks where it's at, you know, based off of the final salary cap numbers at the end of this year. This is
something we've never seen as Steeler fans.
No, the Steelers have
3 mil, 10 mil.
Right. And again, this is a testament to the front office of the Pittsburgh Steelers, Omar Khan, Kevin Colbert, Brandon Hunt. They know what they're doing. Omar Khan, the notorious number cruncher of the front office, to make these things work and make these contracts fit. But they do a great job of finding the ways to keep the talent they really want in the organization, finding ways to afford those guys while not selling the future on, you know, major guys that they really want to keep. You know, and sometimes you can't keep everybody. Like, you know, the James Washington situation where, you know, it's reportedly he requested a trade. Sometimes you're overloaded at a position. You can't keep everybody, but there you can make sure, hey, we're going to keep the guy we really want. Like when Mike Wallace, Emmanuel Sanders, and Antonio Brown were in Pittsburgh, they kept the best one, and that was the best receiver in football for 6 straight years. You know, I don't think this is a situation where it's anywhere near they're spending money they don't have yet. This is going to be more about setting themselves up. The big question is, how much money can you ink TJ Watt for? Do you keep it under 30 mil? You know, some people are putting it in the 28 to 30 mil range. You know, I talked to Dale Lally a lot, and he thinks it'll be closer to 25 mil. Wow. If they keep it at 25, that's a very good sign, because the next step is then next year you're talking to Minkah Fitzpatrick, because then you're looking at his future deal, and you got to lock him up. And he's, you know, and he's another superstar player that you cannot afford to let go. You could be in a situation. Let's highball this right here. And I'm using my calculator, which is why I'm looking away from my phone. Let's highball this. So let's say the Steelers had like 75 mil in cap space. Let's say next year you take away, let's highball at 28 from TJ Watt. And then let's say 15 a year for Minkah Fitzpatrick. They'll still have $32 million in cap space after that. And that money can go to a quarterback, whether it's bringing Ben Roethlisberger back, going and getting a free agent somewhere, doing something along those lines, or making sure that they can get their guy in the draft. Then they'll have to decide, do they want to keep Juju Smith-Schuster, Terrell Edmonds? Do they reinvest in the offensive line because Trey Turner's on a one-year deal, Melvin Ingram's on a one-year deal for the edge rushers? Who will they want to invest in? And they also have to think about in the future, even beyond next season, 2 years after that, they're going to think about, okay, we need to sign Devin Bush to a long-term contract, so they're thinking of those contingency plans and having those in place. But right now, the Steelers are in maybe the most comfortable position cap-wise that they've been in the past, in the Kevin Colbert era, I'd even say, because either they've had a lot of money that they've been shelling out for defensive superstars like Troy Polamalu and James Harrison and James Ferrier and Casey Hampton,
and offensive linemen. They've always paid offensive linemen,
and always in the days of Alan Faneca and Jeff Harding, or in the days of Marquise Pouncey and David DeCastro. You're right; they've always paid it. And the thing is during the Pouncey and DeCastro days, you were also paying the full contract of Ben Roethlisberger. You could at least say for Hardings and Faneca, you were paying Ben's rookie deal. But after 2007, that was gone. So this is going to be a very interesting period for the Steelers as far as financial management of their salary cap, how they keep the crew, how they keep their core together. They want it, and how they pick their core to move forward, and how they want to make themselves competitive. But no, I don't think they're spending money they don't have. They absolutely do have it. It's just going to be about who, how confident are they that they can get TJ Watt and Minka into the numbers that make all of this other stuff work.
So we alluded to it. We're talking about the elephant in the room, talking about TJ Watt, and I wanted to get your opinion on this too, because we obviously know TJ Watt isn't practicing, but still is showing up every day at training camp. So this is my first observation of a soft holdout. So is this the correct way to be like a hold in? Yeah. Is this the correct way now to be like a team leader while still trying to get a new contract done?
I mean, here's the thing. I don't think this is a hold in or a hold out. This is TJ's like, hey guys, I'm not trying to get hurt before I sign my contract. And Steelers are like, no problem, buddy. Like, just go chill over there. Throw that medicine ball. Do some agility drills. We don't want you hurt either. And because again, it'd be different if TJ Watt was hurt last year, or if they needed to see like, man, does he got it? Is he going to take a step up this year? What step up is TJ Watt going to take other than maybe forcing a few more fumbles? This guy is the best edge rusher in football. He knows, and they trust his work ethic. I mean, you saw all the clips of him working out with his brothers, in the off season, on top of the fact that he's still just a ferocious defensive player by himself. He's going to be fine. And the Steelers know that's why Keith Butler was like, yeah, he's doing that, of course, because of his contract. But the Steelers aren't mad at him. You don't see Mike Tomlin saying, man, I wish TJ Watt would be here. Like when Le'Veon Bell wasn't showing up to camp, that was a holdout. That's different. And when he got there, he was just like, yeah, I'm glad you're finally here, Juice. Let's go. Like that. But there's not that mentality about TJ Watt. There's no question about him or wanting to be with the team. The team is like, you know what? We don't need you to be hitting guys in early August. We want you fresh for how this season works out. So I would say a hold in is a funnier way to say, just to make a joke about it. But honestly, Stryker, TJ is chilling. They're going to sign this deal. And when they sign this deal, he'll show up in practice. Even then, if I'm the Steelers, I don't ask too much of him in the practices, because I'm like, listen, man, I know who you are and what you do. Just we'll get you used to getting banged up again, throughout the week, so that you get used to your body can get used to taking hits. And then week 1 against Buffalo Bills, you'll be out there wrecking shop.
Awesome. Love your takes. Love your insight.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Carter over at the Locked On Steelers podcast. Follow him on Twitter and Instagram. Carter Critiques. That's CarterCritiques.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being on the show, man. I had a blast talking with you. We just blew through 40 minutes in like a snap of the fingers.
Yeah, that was easy, Stryker. Anytime you want to chat some ball, man, hit me up, man. I am always down to chat. It's always fun, and I'm glad to see what you guys are doing here at Steeler Nation Unite.
Awesome. I will be taking you up on that, and Steeler Nation appreciates you, man, and all the work you're doing every day over at the Locked On Steelers podcast as well, man. So I love it.
Sir.
Awesome, man. Well, you're free to leave the show. I just got to do my last reads, but I'll be shooting emails to you, let you know when everything's up.
All right, man. Thanks again. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, Chris. Thanks, man. And you too, Steeler Nation, can get great unique gifts on the SteelerNation.com gear page. We have every size and many color choices to satisfy all of Steeler Nation. SteelerNation.com is the best place for fast, unique Steeler content on the internet. Click on the podcast button to listen to one of our many interviews, or click the forum button for the best football discussion on the internet. Subscribe to the SteelerNation.com YouTube channel to be the first to hear about our live vidcast and interviews over at youtube.com/Steeler Nation. Tweet us at Steeler Nation, Instagram us at Steeler Nation.com, follow the Steeler Nation podcast on Twitter at _SN podcast. You can also follow us on Facebook, and we're at Facebook Steeler Nation.com. Follow your host, Steeler Nation Striker, on Twitter and Instagram at Steeler Nation at SN Striker, Striker spelled with a Y. Thanks for joining us on the SteelerNation.com podcast, sponsored by Total Sports Enterprises. I'm your host, G.Stryker, with Chris Carter, rooting along with you as always. Go Steelers! Meow.